Oh, good.
All right.
Alrighty. So, welcome, Connor, to my
Yes.
house.
Welcome, Trenton, to also your house.
Absolutely. What are we doing here?
We are talking about films. This is Switching Reels.
This is Switching Reels.
Yep. So, Godfather Part 2.
Godfather Part 2. That was
Initial reaction.
We have spoilers for Godfather Part 2.
Yes, we have lots of them.
Initial reactions, I didn't like it as much as Part 1. And I feel like
Yeah.
this is one I need to go and watch like multiple times to like really like, but I loved Vito's story arc much better than I liked Mike's.
Yes. Yes. So there's a whole lot we can get into.
Yeah. Initial reactions first. Right?
Initial reactions. Yeah. So I mean that was perfectly good as far as initial reactions go. If you want to expand on it, then feel free to.
Yeah,
but otherwise,
it's just like it keeps you engrossed the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
But this like. It doesn't feel that the like main point of conflict is as enthralling as at least the first movie was. And I liked Vito better.
Yeah. So I will say, watching it again, having already seen it, even though I haven't seen it in a very long time, I kind of knew that like that main sort of conflict took a back seat for most of it.
That is true. It was mostly family stuff.
Yes, and watching it from that perspective of like
everything is
Alfredo's whole situation and like the dynamics he feels with Michael and all that kind of stuff.
Is it Alfredo?
Yeah.
Alfredo?
That's his full name, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
That's so fantastic. I thought it was just Fredo, and that was the full.
I'm pretty sure his full name is Alfredo.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic if it is.
But yeah, so like his whole dynamic and like that takes up a good chunk of the movie.
A very large chunk of the movie.
But yeah, I mean, even the main conflict throughout. It switches like real fast.
Yeah.
So out of 10, with your
enjoyment on this one was I think an 8. I didn't really enjoy it as much as the other ones so far. Okay. It was still good. It was a good movie. Like
it's still a solid. You still enjoyed an 8.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it was not a bad movie. But since it's a sequel, and we're like, I guess Batman. We didn't maybe the downside of watching just The Dark Knight and not Batman Begins.
Right. Yeah.
But comparing it when it's so close in my mind, it's been a month, 2 months, something like that since we watched the first one.
It's been
a month and
it's been 4-ish weeks.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But that was still really recent, and I really liked the first one.
Yeah.
This one.
So that's as far as technical side of things go, I feel like I would give this one a 9.
Yeah.
I
think I'm there with you as well.
For actually structure reasons, as opposed to the first one, which I think had a few technical errors and that kind of thing, but
they're kind of endearing.
Yeah. This one, I didn't really see a whole lot of technical errors, but I do definitely think structurally it has some, not necessarily problems, but quirks.
Yeah.
That I feel like could take you out of it a little bit. I would probably put my enjoyment level maybe a little bit higher at like a 9.
Yeah.
Again, going back to it, knowing.
Yeah, and I think if I saw this again, I'd probably enjoy it more.
The other thing, though, that I noticed, and so when I first saw this, I hadn't watched a ton of like gangster films. I was mostly starting at the top of this list.
Yeah.
And having seen some of the other gangster films that this did influence, like a lot,
yeah,
I can definitely see a little bit more of its legacy.
Totally.
that, even films that would probably more closely resemble The Godfather Part 1, I think have a lot of the feeling from the second one.
Yeah, and I think
especially with Vito's arc.
The gangster vibe in Part 2 is better. Like, everything feels more stereotypically gangster.
Yeah.
Than the first one did. I think I'm also a night on technical. And I think it is the same. Like, I had more questions in this. Like, things weren't as well explained visually as I would have liked. Like, the first one I thought did a really good job of being like, hey, I could follow. There were a couple of things in this one where it's like,
there's a lot.
It takes a lot of filling in the blanks.
There's a lot of, like, and this is something I noticed on this one, is you watch, especially right at the beginning, if you're not paying really close attention, you don't know what's going on.
No.
Because Michael tells Hyman Roth one thing.
Yes.
And he tells
Frankie?
Frankie Five Fingers.
Yeah.
I don't know his actual last name. He actually might be Corleone.
No, it's P something. Because he brought his brother. They brought their brother in.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Some big Italian P name.
Yeah. Anyway, but he tells them the exact opposite thing.
Exactly.
And I realized part of why they did it, because watching it again, you're going, okay, so Michael,
he's playing
both sides,
exactly.
and you're supposed to pick that up.
Exactly.
One thing that I really noticed on this watch through is we don't follow Michael from a personal perspective in this one.
That's true.
We're constantly seeing him from outside, which I think was intentional.
That's probably true. Because there is a focus also on, like, the story feels more like an external analysis of mob life and, like, how to fit family into it.
Yeah.
And how his dad did a better job at it than he did.
Well, and
it's my opinion.
Yes. I don't necessarily. So there is. I think we're in our next question, so let's go to that one. Okay. Yeah. So we are in that next spot, but before we move on, does it deserve its place on the list?
I'll let you know after I see 13 Angry Men or whatever.
12 Angry Men?
Oh, it's 12 Angry Men.
It's a juror drama.
It's a what?
It's a juror drama. Juror.
A juror? Oh, like jury.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
So 12
Got you. Angry Men.
Yeah.
On a jury.
Yeah.
Interesting. Stacked that jury.
I would say, does it deserve its place? It definitely deserves to be on the list.
Yeah, it absolutely deserves to
unquestionably.
Be on the list. Absolutely. It's a very good movie. I don't know if I would call it the fourth best movie of all time.
Yeah.
Right now, at this very second.
Does it deserve its number 4 spot?
Seems tenuous to me.
I could say without a shadow of a doubt that it belongs in the top 25.
Yeah,
absolutely. I can't say for sure that I would put it in the top 4. Maybe in the top 10.
Yeah.
But I might put a few movies above it personally. That being said, I'm going to skip to one of our last questions.
Beautiful, please do.
This, I think, is a movie that I would recommend to anybody who has seen the first Godfather film to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you've already watched the first one, you're still kind of interested in, like, The Godfather generally, then I completely agree.
Because I think that it's not necessarily... I would not put it on the same level as the first one. I know some people who actually prefer Godfather Part 2. Yeah.
Interesting. I want to talk to them. If you have that opinion, please let me know.
But sorry. Oh yeah. I think if you watch the first one and you enjoy it, you are missing out by not watching the second part.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, there's some nice things in it, and also just for Vito's story.
Yeah.
I'd watch it again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny watching Vito's story and how much I have mixed it up in my mind with a film called Once Upon a Time in America, which is another gangster movie that is on this list.
Nice.
And I credit it with simultaneously horrifying me and desensitizing me in a way I don't think many films have.
Totally.
That's
fantastic, actually.
It's a movie.
Yeah. I'm hearing like the middle of this list is just you get sketch.
It happens pretty early,
Okay,
actually.
nice.
Yeah, I mean, not
early sketch.
Like not necessarily films that I would be like, oh yeah, don't ever watch these, but some stuff where you're like, it's some powerful filmmaking in some shocking ways.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, even after 12 Angry Men, we've got Schindler's List coming up. So
yeah,
like,
I've heard. Still haven't seen that one, so
yeah, you're in
I'm
for a movie.
I'm clicking up. What do you? Totally off topic. Do you remember what number is the first movie you haven't seen?
Somewhere around 25-ish.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's only gonna take us a year.
And I mean, I quite possibly will see it before
that. Yes, exactly.
It's either Cinema Paradiso or Grave of the Fireflies. I haven't seen either of those, but they're both very high on my list because they're the only 2 films in the top 50 I haven't seen.
That's fantastic.
All of this is beside the point, though. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about theming.
Okay. Yeah. So theming, because like I feel like they went pretty like nicely heavy with themes in this one, and that were like fairly easy to pick out.
Yes.
And that were generally enjoyable.
What I find really interesting is the way that the themes in this one relate to the themes in the first one.
Yeah.
The first one, we talked a lot about how corruption was a theme and how people become corrupted and where corruption is and that sort of thing. I would say that this one has a lot more to do with erosion and sort of you watch the way that everything is kind of eroding away from Michael. Yeah, his family's eroding. Yep. His power is eroding.
Yep.
And they even have like toward the end with Frankie.
Tom also.
Yeah, his trust in Tom. The conversation that really solidified this for me was the one with Frankie Five Fingers at the very end, where they start talking about ancient Rome.
Yeah, and the falling of the empire.
Yeah, and it's very, very interesting the way that they were able to take sort of that the theme of corruption and almost a rise with it, and then seeing how it dissipates over the course of this film.
Yeah, and I feel like there's also the last scene, I feel like, is important to the rest of everything you've seen so far, like with Mike not involving himself with his family generally. And that's what you see as a consistent theme of his personality throughout all of the movies, where it's like he, like in the letter of the law, cares about his family. And specifically, though, it feels like he cares about his legacy.
Yeah.
And less about necessarily the people that got him there.
I could see that. When I watched it, I saw it as a microcosm of the film itself. So he starts out and everybody's happy he's there, and like it's mostly a good time.
Yeah.
There's some conflict between them, but nothing that was like hostile.
Yeah.
And then he brings up the fact that he's joined the army. And suddenly he has himself created a rift from the rest of his family.
Yep.
And then his family leaves the room, leaving him by himself.
Yeah.
Which again with that sort of theme of erosion and the way that he is eroding it.
Which also pulls, like, but the family left for the father, which is also something that's, like, brought up a few times in this movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, your father wouldn't have done this. But I feel like there's a giant undertow of, like, your father had more respect and trust in this entire community than you do.
Yeah. Vito Corleone weighs heavy over this entire movie. Yeah. I saw a lot of that as one of the early quotes in the movie. I can't remember who says it, but talking about times changing.
Yes.
And so seeing it through
partway through where he's talking to his mom and he says that times are changing.
I believe you. I don't remember.
It's just over halfway through. Yeah, it's
if it's a single line in a 3.5 hour movie, exactly. I don't feel too bad about missing it.
Superman.
But yeah, watching, like, from that perspective, I kind of saw, like, what was working for Vito Corleone would not work for Michael because, and that was the other thing, the story with Hyman Roth where he. We watch his fall, essentially. Yeah. And moving from being this powerhouse to basically getting picked up at the airport. Well, getting shot at the airport.
Exactly.
But watching that trajectory, I think, is just another way that they're sort of mirroring this, like, the old world is eroding and dying.
That's true.
And he in a lot of ways, I think, kind of was standing for what Vito Corleone's world was. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I do think, I don't know, I felt like everything was sort of feeding into this one theme. And maybe I'm completely off and I've just picked something up.
Like it. You like it. Going to cognitive functions here, but we're not going to. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I also really liked, again, like, I still feel like when we were talking about the first one, we talked about how generally you could tell that Vito wasn't a good guy, but you liked him the best out of all of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And that he generally was the best person
he's the best of them. He's the best bad guy, yeah.
And, like, you saw that in how he started to try and take care of his neighborhood after he killed Fanucci. Yeah, there we go. And you also just saw that, like, in Godfather 1. Like, it was a very, very good lead-up. He cared about all of his people. And
right, yeah.
He was unique in that as a mob boss of his time as well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't passed on to Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you see that from the very first scene, actually, when everybody's complaining about having to wait in the lobby.
Yes. Exactly.
And wait in line. And it's like, and again, even from the beginning, I saw that as sort of the times changing and that sort of thing. Almost the speed up that we've only continued to see throughout the past. I can only speak for about the past 15 years.
Exactly.
Because I don't remember much before that. But I think, it's generally accepted that over the past 60 or so years, at the very least, things have just been speeding up faster and faster and faster. And so getting to the point where Vito could take care of everyone whenever they were ready. Even if he was busy, it was busy, but you could still
busy.
Yeah, you could still get in. But with Michael, like, it is like, no, you have to wait in line like everybody else.
Yeah, and his ambition was higher than his father's.
Yeah.
Like, his father came over absolutely destitute and was trying to build something good for himself and his family.
Right, yeah. And he saw
kind of got out of hand.
Yeah, and he saw somebody that was
doing it not as well as he knew that he could have.
Well, not even
and also
that.
disrespecting his values.
Yeah, it was the fact that Don Fanucci showed absolutely no care for anyone but himself. Mm-hmm. And you even see that with the grocery stand toward the end of his arc, where he gets all the groceries and he tries to pay for them, and the guy's like, no. And he's like, okay, come see me, I'll do something for you.
Exactly. It was a very personal relationship, which was different than it's just not what Mike wanted. I feel that kind of situation could have actually worked, even with the times changing, as long as you change like how you do it slightly. Yeah. But it's not what Mike wanted. Yeah. Is my feeling. He started digging to start eroding his soil. This was not just happening around him.
And that's why I think like that last scene does a really good job.
He chooses
the rift.
Yeah. Agreed.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is some of the acting performances in this are... It's not like every scene you're riveted to a single character, but there are some scenes where you just cannot look away from one person. I think Harvard put out an article, I think it was them, talking about the scene where Fredo is in the chair. Mm-hmm.
Yes, got you.
Like he's yelling at Michael. And,
yes.
Sort of the position that puts him in. And I just... I think we're talking about power dynamics, but let's not take away from the acting
very, 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 very
of that
good
scene.
Yeah,
like he's just
wonderful.
Yeah. Because he does seem absolutely desperate.
Yes.
He feels disrespected and like he's been stepped over.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not entirely sure why.
Yeah. But there were scenes like that just scattered throughout the movie that I don't think...
very engrossing.
Yeah. I don't think we had as many of those in the first Godfather.
No, I agree with that.
Not that the acting was bad in that. It's just like there weren't any scenes where you're just riveted to a single character.
It wasn't as important. Like this one was more about the character and less about the like rise of a new member of crime family.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on real quick before we move on?
This was themes, right? Essentially, I think that's what we were doing at this point. That was the spot, but then we kind of filtered down. I think.
So I've got standout scenes and technical things that stood out to us.
Beautiful.
Do you remember? Are there any other scenes you wanted to talk about?
I really don't understand the whole not being able to murder this old man who's been dying of a heart attack for 20 years when this guy is much larger.
Yes.
The first time, the panning doesn't make sense. The second time that he goes to try to murder him, you just see him close doors. He should have been able to kill that man. And then it's like, oh, your bodyguard died. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell me how this man that's literally crippled in his bed somehow survived dying a second time by this brute of a man.
That's not well explained. I'll give you that.
Anyway, so that stuck with me.
The first scene, I can give it some leeway of like, it was an artistic choice. Like the guy strangles him and he doesn't kill him, and we want to show the continuation.
Exactly.
And so like I can get the time jump there
for sure.
The second one though, how is he alive?
Exactly. Like actually though, like everyone is out of the room. It's just this man in black that has a limp, that has his only thing. He has one limb, and this other guy can't breathe.
There is going to be somebody that posts in the comments about how we completely missed this
scene.
entire.
This is when Micaiah's thing started. Just kidding. I don't think this one was, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened there.
That. I hope that does happen actually.
Yes,
and then I can go back and look at it.
If you know what the hell is going on there, let us know.
We'd really like it. I'm really bugged by that one scene. Like standout scenes. I actually settings. I loved the setting of the compound, of the main family compound in Nevada.
Yeah.
That was a really, really cool setting.
It stood out to me this time. First time I watched it, it didn't. And just was like, oh, it's the Corleone House Part 2.
Exactly. But no, I really liked it.
But no, it is.
It's one pretty and like more power grabbing than the original house.
Yeah.
Like more yelly. I can't remember what the word is.
Ostentatious?
Yeah, we'll go with ostentatious.
Okay.
That's a great word for it.
What stood out to me was, yes, that it was very beautiful, but it also is the way we mark the changing of time.
Seasons, the entire story.
Yes. With the exception of the very beginning when we have the title cards.
Yes,
tell us what year it is.
What year it is, exactly, which drop off.
Yeah.
At some point.
Pretty quickly. Yeah, I think they show them total of twice.
After he grows into the actor that's going to play Vito for the rest of the movie.
Robert De Niro?
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah, that's Robert De Niro.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and that reminded me of the way that we show, there was just something I'd never caught before, which is right after he talks, where Michael comes back and he's talking to Tom, and telling Tom that he doesn't want anything to happen to Fredo
while his mom's alive,
while his mother is alive. And oh wait, was that Tom or was that Rocco that he was talking to?
I think he was telling Rocco.
Oh, okay. Anyway, telling him that he didn't want anything to happen until, while their mother was alive. And while it is pretty soon after the funeral scene that Fredo gets offed,
it's a hot sec though. It feels like a
they put one of those shots. They put one of those shots in there.
Yeah, one of the season shots.
He gets killed in Fall.
And like we saw him talking with Anthony in summer-ish is what I kind of guessed.
Well, their mother died in spring.
Yeah, okay.
Because you can see
half a year.
Yeah,
you go your uncle for half a year, and then we off him.
Which is really wild to me.
Yeah.
Because, like, my understanding of that scene being like, okay, so now it's fair game.
Yeah.
You know. It takes a while.
Takes a second. Like, it's during the rest of the cleanup.
Yeah.
Like, Mike only likes doing everything all at once.
It makes for some really powerful scenes.
It does make
I'll give you that.
Would agree.
But yeah. The other thing. We talked in the first film about Tom's position being outside of
the family.
And one thing that stood out to me at the beginning with that in mind is they do really pull him front and center in the family.
They do.
Because
very early.
Michael trusts him.
Yeah.
And not only does he trust him, but I think some of it, if there is some of that, him not viewing family in the same way that the rest of his family does, seeing Tom as, he is my brother, like any of my other brothers, except Fredo is, what does he call him, stupid and weak?
Yes.
So, like, yeah. But yeah, bringing him in early, and then watching even that tie fall away.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was one other thing I wanted to touch on. Oh, A scene I hadn't noticed before. At least noticed for what it was. After Kay leaves and she's talking to her kids when she comes back.
Yep.
And he closes the door. I mean, it's a Godfather movie. Doors are important.
Yes.
Because it tells you who is in and who is not.
Exactly.
And we don't see her for the rest of the movie.
No.
Not that there's a ton of movie
There's
left.
Like 20 minutes left at that point, maybe 10.
But still, like, the fact that is...
I thought that he had killed her from the last one.
Oh.
Like, I saw the kids when the mom died, and no Kay.
Oh, so, yeah, that's fair.
We only see her. So you see after the trial hearing, she's there to have the fight and the abortion conversation.
Yeah.
Which I felt also was a little... Like, it makes sense canonically, but it was kind of weird as a... It felt out of the blue, which I feel like she was actually kind of intending a little bit, maybe, but...
I feel like it was supposed to be out of the blue mostly because we have been... Weirdly, despite the fact that this feels very detached from Michael, I think there are certain things that they tried to give you as if we were from Michael's perspective. And the fact that she has been essentially cut out of his life for most of the movie at this point.
Even though only kind of, I feel like. Actually, up to this point, she's been with him. She was with him at the hearing, and she was with him at the beginning.
Yes, but the entire most of the movie between those 2 points is him hanging out in Miami or Cuba.
That's true.
And we don't see her for a really long time. When we do, she's actually in the background.
Mm-hmm. Or stitching a dress.
Yep. Well, that was right when he came back.
That's actually right when he came back.
Right. And so kind of showing that detachment from her.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finally have a conversation. They're on the same wavelength.
Ownership. Yeah.
And that's when, okay, so you're going to find out everything that happened now.
Yeah, exactly. You're gone for a hot sec.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense, actually. I agree with that. So when you see her right after the sentence scene, they have that fight. And then you don't see her for like half an hour. Wow.
Is it that long?
It feels like that long between after that scene is done and then the mom dies. There's a conversation with Alfredo, and a couple other things happen before you see her again.
I suppose, yeah. I guess
I was really happy when I saw her. She's like, oh, good, she wasn't killed. That's nice.
Knowing that I don't remember her being killed, I kind of went into it with like, I don't.
She's there.
Yeah, she's there
That's
somewhere.
Nice.
She left, but yeah.
Yeah, at least it felt prominent to me. Like I had no idea what happened to her.
Yeah, and that's completely fair given the tone of the scene where she disappears. Yeah, there are just, and again, I think some of these things are just structural. Like, if you've seen the movie before, it probably comes across a little differently than if you haven't.
Exactly, no, entirely.
Because, like, I don't know if I've seen this movie since high school.
Nice.
I did watch it a long time ago. Yeah, and again, I think it's still a masterpiece. It's just...
Yeah, it's very, very good still.
It's very different from the first one.
Very different from the first one, and I feel like they tried to mirror a lot of the elements of the first one, but without the same story or the same structure, and so it didn't... They tried to use a lot of structure pieces and a lot of mirroring and stuff in the first one, which didn't work as well in this one.
All right. Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have here?
I think it was stand-up technical things, which we've talked a little bit about.
Yeah, I mean...
Again, setting was great.
One thing that, that's actually...
All the settings were great.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think they really improved on in this one was going from the first one where I think the settings were probably the weakest element of the entire thing, with the sole exception of going to Italy.
Yeah.
Italy looked like Italy.
Yes, it did.
But like even the New York scenes and all of that stuff, you're like, yeah, it's kind of in New York. I believe it. It could be literally any city. But this one having like, especially Vito's story, like being set in Little Italy and all of that stuff, like unquestionably.
Yeah, it was great.
And I think the settings immerse you in the story in a way that if they weren't done as well, it would throw you out with certain things just because, again, the structure is a little funky on this one. But yeah, I think the settings are absolutely fantastic. Completely tangential from what we're talking about. Not even a tangent, just going backwards. The senator's story, where he starts off with the whole, like, I don't like you, I don't like Italians.
Anything about you, and then ending with...
Right, and watching his, rather than corruption, because I don't necessarily think it's corruption in the same way that we see in the first one.
Yeah.
It's sort of his... the erosion of his power. Yes. Like, by the end, he's just in their pockets.
Exactly. Like, he doesn't have any autonomy.
Right, yeah. And I don't know, I didn't notice that before, and like watching sort of that trajectory, but watching it again, I was like, that is very, very interesting. The very first, not the very first, one of the very first things you hear from him is, I don't like Italians, I don't like your sneaky ways.
Yes.
One of the last things you hear is
Best
him...
Americans in America.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to watch, as much as I cannot agree with his moral standings.
Exactly.
Watching those crumble.
Yeah.
Under pressure. Just very, very interesting.
It's very cool. No, I agree. Do we think that he killed her in a blackout, or do we think that he was blacked out and then he was Corleone? Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, he was blacked out, and that the dead prostitute was planted.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I was like, that was really off-putting.
Yeah, it's an off-putting scene.
That was an off-putting scene. For standout scenes, quite off-putting.
Yeah. I mean, with this one and the first Godfather, it's hard to say that they aren't just shot incredibly well.
Yeah,
like
their
cinematography is amazing. There were some weird things with editing choices I noticed this time around.
Okay.
And not just in like the story structure sort of way, but like even having the scene where Michael and Kay are fighting and they just have the shot of the hallway
with the kids.
Yeah. And you just hear like
shouting
lines that they're shouting through, and like you can't really hear, but you can kind of hear what they're saying. And then they just go back into the room and the conversation's going. Like it's very, very strange. Or, you know, even the scene with Fredo getting shot and the leaves rolling on the lawn.
Yeah.
It just
also
I don't think they were bad choices necessarily. They're just strange, and I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of them was.
I feel like also I would have liked it better if it didn't end with Mike just sitting in a forest in his black broody jacket, and if it had ended actually with him being in his family's house, with the flashback to his family's house.
It does end there.
No, it doesn't. It ends with a random broody look at Mike's face.
Oh, really?
After that one fades into the broody look where he is sitting in a chair with his black jacket, just thinking. And it starts with his face just randomly looking, and we fade into...
Yeah, so that I definitely, like, the first part I'm on board with. It's him reminiscing
a little bit
about, basically, he's seeing what we have already talked about.
Yeah.
Like, he's watching that progression, the microcosm of that one memory.
Mm.
I think maybe the point of that was to bring you back into, like, this is where he is now. Like, not only is his family gone, but they are gone.
Like, yeah, he's, like, really sitting alone. Like, he's sitting real alone. I see what you're saying.
He's real alone now.
He's real alone.
So, like, that one, I can understand it.
I see what you're saying.
I understand why you would say that you'd prefer if they just ended on that that flashback, but I can at least understand the editing choice.
With you saying that, it makes more sense.
But yeah, there were some things where I'm like, that just seems like a weird choice.
Yeah.
Again, not bad,
just weird.
Just strange choices.
Just strange. Completely agree with that.
Yeah. Let me see.
Whew.
So we've basically gone through all of our questions.
Yeah, at this point. Perfect.
And that's pretty fast for us.
I feel it's actually about average right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We've been talking for a long time, actually.
Okay.
It's just been good conversation.
Yeah.
So again, you already touched a little bit on who you recommend this to, and I agree. Just whoever watched the first one, and in this case, the first one is very important to watch first.
Yeah, I didn't realize how important it was, and I think that this one could be separated from the first one, and you would still understand mostly what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are enough thematic and I think I don't know. I feel like there is a lot of meaningful material that you would miss if you hadn't seen the first one.
The first rise to power from Mike is also, I think, super important.
Okay. Yeah, that's completely fair. But yeah, so...
Whoever, let's watch the first one. Watch the first one first.
Yep. And if you've gotten to this point in the video, you know way more than you should.
There are people like that. Like, my sister will just go and watch spoilers and read spoilers about books. And my mom, I don't know if I've told you this, my mom reads the last page of a book first. Isn't it crazy? Yeah, it's weird. But she likes knowing,
is it the How Harry Met Sally thing? Where he talks about reading the last page of a book, that way if he dies, he doesn't...
No, it's not the dies thing. She doesn't care about the dies. She doesn't want the suspense, actually. Like, it's sometimes too much for her. And she'd really just like to know what she should be expecting by the end. And, yeah. Sometimes I do that. If I'm like, nope, I gotta jump to the end. But anyways, there are people that will totally watch this and then maybe go use it to watch the movie, which are... Thanks for being here.
You should just...
Thanks for being here. Connor doesn't understand
hear me saying this, and then go live your life. You shouldn't do that.
See back to episode 1 where Connor admits to being pretentious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen next week's film? We're watching 12 Angry Men.
No, I have not. I thought it was 13 Angry Men, as I had already said.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, I have not seen it.
All right. So I have seen it.
Nice.
And after our first movie that is longer than 3 hours, we're going to our first one that's shorter than 2.
That's nice. An average runtime?
Yeah, and then we're to Lord of the Rings next. Or Schindler's List, then Lord of the Rings.
Ooh.
We got another.
Also, it's Two Towers first, right?
Nope.
No, it's Return of the King.
Return of the King.
Yay.
Which
we should talk about, actually.
I have weirdly, I think this is a cult opinion.
Okay.
Two Towers is my favorite Lord of the Rings movie.
And I've totally heard like very diehard people like, no, Two Towers is the best one.
Yeah.
And I am on the Return of the King is the better of the two. However, really? Two Towers is really, really good. I'm looking forward to talking about it and going and doing that.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast. I like. There's so many good scenes in Two Towers. So I completely understand. Like you get the March of the Ents and you get the Minas Tirith. Nope, that's like third
Helm's
book.
Deep.
Yeah, Helm's Deep.
I think Helm's Deep is just
gorgeous.
I think it's the best battle in the entire series.
It's so good.
So
I can't really complain too much. I like the Ghost Army and I like the I like what they did with the battle for Minas Tirith and
this is a conversation for another time.
Yes, it is. So speaking of, how do we end this?